Picture it. The morning mist is rolling across the hills of feudal Japan, and in a quiet little village there lived a young samurai named Yuki. Now, Yuki didn't just want to be a warrior. He dreamed of becoming the absolute greatest swordsman in the entire land. He'd spend hours, I mean literally hours, passionately talking about his grand plans. He'd obsessively read the legendary tales of famous battles, vividly imagining himself standing victorious over his enemies. He believed with every fiber of his being that just having this massive burning ambition would somehow naturally and inevitably forge him into a legend. Yet, whenever the sun actually rose and the harsh reality of the training yard called, Yuki always found a reason to stay inside. You know the excuses. The weather was a little too damp. He wasn't feeling 100%. Or, his absolute favorite, he simply needed to plan his ultimate training routine just a little more carefully before he could begin.
And while Yuki's dreams grew larger and way more elaborate, his actual skills stayed completely stagnant. The younger warriors in his village, the guys who didn't talk much, but who went out and struck the wooden pell with their swords every single day, they soon surpassed him. Eventually, Yuki was forced to confront a really quiet, devastating reality. His endless planning and his constant avoidance of the grueling, unglamorous hard work, well, it had cost him his life's purpose. His dreams had not lifted him higher, they had actually made him weaker. His ambition, stripped of any real action, left him entirely unprepared, deeply frustrated, and just hollowed out by regret.
Okay, let's dive into part 1, the trap of grand ambition and the danger of the dreamer identity.
So, Yuki's tragedy is actually a pretty profound revelation about human psychology. Why do our largest, most ambitious goals so often end up making us weaker? The answer really comes down to how our brains are wired. See, he genuinely believed that setting these colossal goals would automatically push him into action. But instead, he adopted the identity of a dreamer. He created this massive, paralyzing gap between the glorious future he wanted and the immediate, gritty discomfort he was actually willing to endure. And here's the crazy part. The more Yuki spoke about his epic plans, the more his mind rewarded him with a dopamine hit. It felt almost as if he had already achieved those great victories just by talking about them. But dreams without action quietly waste your absolute most precious resource, your time. And time, once it's lost, can never be won back on any battlefield. When our goals are that massive, the sheer distance between where we are and where we want to be feels so overwhelming. It actually tricks us into delaying the tiny, unglamorous steps that actually move us forward.
Moving on to part 2, the illusion of motivation and the myth of waiting to be ready.
We tell ourselves we just need the perfect conditions. We wait for that surge of energy, that lightning strike we call motivation. We fundamentally believe we have to feel completely ready before we can do the hard work. But listen, waiting to be ready is just the mind's cleverest defense mechanism against discomfort. It's the lie that keeps the sword right there in the scabbard. Preparation without practice is simply disguised procrastination. Look at the reality here. We totally convince ourselves that organizing our gear or perfectly planning out our routine is progress, but it's not. It just creates this comforting illusion of momentum while leaving our actual skills completely unchanged. The harsh, undeniable reality of progress is doing the difficult, unglamorous, and frankly painful daily practice when nobody is watching.
We literally have the entire equation backwards. The myth is that motivation creates action. The idea that you just wake up feeling inspired, and then you get to work. But waiting for motivation before you begin is exactly like waiting for perfect sunny weather before you start a 1,000-mile journey. You might end up waiting forever. Meanwhile, the traveler who is willing to walk even in the freezing rain is going to reach the destination years ahead of you. The truth is simply this. Motivation is not the spark that creates action, it's the flame that follows it. You act first. That action builds momentum, and that momentum generates the energy that we suddenly mistake for inspiration.
Which brings us to part 3, Musashi and the Quiet Rhythm, the discipline of the greats.
Centuries ago, the legendary, undefeated swordsman Miyamoto Musashi completely understood this reality. He knew that absolute greatness is almost never forged in sudden, chaotic bursts of energy. Instead, it's built through a quiet, almost invisible rhythm of relentless repetition. While everyone else was out there seeking some dramatic epiphany, Musashi sought the discipline of the daily grind. This is the very heart of Kaizen, the way of small, continuous improvements. As the ancient teaching goes, the mountain is climbed one step at a time, not by staring at its peak and wishing to be there. Really let those words sink in for a second. Even if the steps you take today seem pitifully small, they lead to incredible strength simply because they are repeated. Even if your progress feels agonizingly slow, it eventually compounds into absolute mastery, purely because it does not stop.
Imagine a samurai student who is plagued by profound laziness.
Yet, he makes one tiny commitment. He will practice a single, simple sword form every morning. On day 1, he's mocked. His friends tell him a few swings aren't going to make him a warrior, but he ignores the mockery and just continues. By month 1, the movement is automatic. His body is growing denser, his technique sharper. Fast forward to month 6, and a massive transformation has occurred. By mastering that one tiny movement every single day, he has accidentally built a rock-solid foundation that allows him to learn incredibly advanced skills with effortless ease. And his friends? The ones who waited to feel that glorious surge of motivation? They are still exactly where they started. The smallest step, taken every single day, carries infinitely more power than the grandest plan that never leaves the page.
Now let's look at part 4, the way of small improvements and acting despite resistance. We always tend to imagine the samurai in these dramatic, bloody battles, right? But their real strength actually came from the humble discipline of their daily routine. They didn't train because the sun was shining or because they woke up with a sudden burst of motivation. They trained because training was simply their way of life. They acted despite the internal resistance. The master, Yagyu Munenori, perfectly encapsulated this truth when he said, "The sword that waits for perfect conditions never leaves its sheath." Our intense need for motivation is very often just a mask for fear. We fear the discomfort of starting when we're exhausted. We feel the brutal resistance of continuing when our muscles ache. But true discipline isn't about magically avoiding those negative feelings. It's about actively moving straight through them.
Finally, part 5, the power to act. This is how we escape the motivation trap.
So how do we stop being Yuki the dreamer and start being Musashi the master? By reclaiming the power to act right now, in this very moment, regardless of how heavy your limbs feel or how distant your goal appears. It comes down to implementing 3 profound steps. Step 1, begin with small daily actions. Make them so terribly insignificant that you literally cannot fail. 1 page read, 1 email sent, 1 sword swing. Step 2, abandon the illusion of readiness. You are never going to feel fully ready to do the hard things. Accept that and step into the arena anyway. And step 3, trust in habits, not fleeting emotions. Don't place your future in the hands of something as fundamentally unstable as a feeling. Place your trust in the concrete foundation of your daily commitments. True, undeniable strength is the ability to grind forward when conditions are absolutely terrible.
I want to leave you with this final, piercing thought from the way of the warrior. I am not controlled by my feelings. I am guided by my commitments. Strength doesn't mean saying, "I feel like doing this today." True strength, the kind that alters history and shapes destinies, means looking in the mirror and saying, "I will do this, whether I feel like it or not." The power to act without waiting for motivation is the ultimate power to shape your life. So, what small action will you force yourself to take the moment this explainer ends?